So you planned your first backpacking trip, you set out into the backcountry, and then it, for whatever reason, just did not go according to plan. Maybe the weather turned against you, or your body just didn't want to cooperate. You had a gear failure you couldn't get around, some kind of planning mishap happened that you couldn't really even predict. Whatever it is, you thought you're going to be going out there for days on end, and you ended up having to bail early. So now you are back home. You are staring at all of this gear that you didn't even get to use, at bags of food that you thought you were going to be able to eat while you're out on the trail, and now it's just sitting at home, ready to be eaten, but you don't even want to look at it. And above all else, you probably feel like you really just failed your backpacking trip. If you've failed your backpacking trip, and you don't know what to do about it, and you don't know how to get over all these feelings that you're having right now, this is the video for you. So today we're going to be talking about how to process failing a backpacking trip, how to work through all of those feelings you have that are probably kind of bubbling up even maybe right now, and more importantly and most importantly, how to get back out on the trail after a failed backpacking trip to motivate and get back out there and go do it. So I'm not also just kind of talking out of my butt here. I have personal experience with this. I have failed more than one backpacking trip. I have had to bail out on more than one backpacking trip. So this is from personal experience. These are things that I've dealt with myself and things I've had to figure out. And I want to share my experiences with you so that it's a little bit easier for you and we can just sort of work through all of this together. My very first backpacking trip 15 years ago, it was three of us. We decided to go on our first backpacking trip. I think in the summer before my senior year of high school or the summer after, I can't recall right now, but we didn't plan very well. We didn't have any of the right gear. We thought we were ready and we really weren't. We had a route that wasn't really designated. We didn't have a good way to track mileage. We did all of the wrong things, basically. All we had that was right was a desire to go backpacking and to get out there on the trail. That was about the only thing that was correct. Everything else was wrong. Our gear, how we planned the trip, our maps, the way we were tracking mileage, which by the way was one of those old pedometers that just kind of tracks how many steps you take. Not a smartwatch, but just like one of the ones that you wear on your hip. And it tracks the amount of steps you take. And that was how we were going to track mileage, because we were like, oh, well, if we take this many steps, you divide that by 3, and that gives you about a mile, for how those many paces you take. And then to top it all off, we actually lost the pedometer within the first mile. So then we were just kind of going off of feeling and the best we could. But we were doing it on a trail that was not actually designated, and it was just following a river that winds and snakes through the state. And we were trying to go from the beginning of a river system where it starts to the lake where it emptied out into. A couple of days of hiking down the road or down the trail. And that was our best bet. And that was our first backpacking trip. As you can imagine, it didn't work out very well. We got rained on. All of our gear got soaking wet. We didn't have any of the right equipment for it. We ended up spending one night on the trail when we were supposed to spend 2. That one night on the trail, we slept in a tent on a slope underneath an overpass right next to a pizza joint, which is where we got our food because we couldn't cook any of our food because we also didn't plan well enough to cook our food well. So trust me when I tell you that if there's a mistake you can make while backpacking, I more or less have probably made it, and I probably did it in my first trip. And that's just the first failed trip I had. I had another one many years later, and we're gonna talk about that as well. So I just wanted to say that to let you understand and help you understand that I do know how you're feeling, I know where you've been, and it stinks. So actually, I did just mention this, and I thought about putting it later on in the video, but I'm just gonna put it here now. So the second trip that I had to bail out on was actually my second most recent backpacking trip. It was in the Uinta Highline Trail in Utah, the UHT. It's a notoriously difficult trail. And that one was my wife's first backpacking trip ever. And I'm the one that planned it. So I made mistakes there because I planned a much too difficult trail for a beginner backpacker. And we got one day in, we spent one night and then had to bail out. It was supposed to be a 7-day trip, and we had to bail out on the second day because we were just not prepared physically and mentally for a trail that was as difficult as it was. So I have one single picture from when we bailed off that trail because both of us were just so disheartened that we didn't want to record it in any way. We didn't want to have any memories of it. We have one picture of us sitting along the side of the road eating sausage, like summer sausage that we were supposed to have 3 days later. But we're just eating it on the side of the road, waiting for a shuttle to come pick us up. And that is how we failed one of our more recent backpacking trips. So 15 years ago, I failed my first trip. And last year, I think I failed one of my most recent backpacking trips. So I I really am saying this, that no matter how experienced you are, you can still run into issues. You can still run into things you don't expect, or things you can't plan for, or like you can plan for, but we didn't plan well enough. I made a mistake planning a trip that was too difficult, and all of these things. So I really am just saying this to help you understand that, yeah, we've all been there. And I know the feeling of telling somebody you're gonna be gone for days on this amazing backpacking trip, and then 2 days later, you're back home and everyone's saying, well, why are you here? You're supposed to be out there. And you have to explain it and say that you failed and you messed up and you couldn't do it and all those things. It really sucks. So I really do just want to drive home the point that I know where you've been at. I know where you are at, because I've been there myself. The point in all of this is not to say like, oh man, I'm always going to fail, because that's not true. The point is to say that even experts and pros and people who've been doing this for a decade or 2 decades do still fail sometimes, and failure is a part of the process. It's how you learn. And I learned a lot of things on that first backpacking trip, and I learned a lot of new things on that trip that we had to bail out on the UHT as well. So this failure is learning, it's a process of learning, and it is not failure without purpose. So why does failing a backpacking trip hurt so much? I think in particular is that it really is a personal experience. It's something that you have put a lot of time and effort into. It's something that you have kind of created this standard of, I am physically fit enough to do this. I am mentally fit enough to do this backpacking trip, to go out there in the wild on my own or with a small group of people and start from point A and get to point B, and I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do this thing. And then, of course, as I talked about earlier, you've told all your friends, you've told your family, you've told all these different people, I'm going to be out there, I'm going to be doing this really cool thing that's really tough, and you have to be self-sufficient and carry all your gear on your own back, and all that stuff. And why it hurts so much when you have to bail and when you fail a backpacking trip is because it feels like all of your own expectations of yourself and all of the expectations of everyone else that you've told about the trip have just kind of come crashing down around you. And I think that's why failing a backpacking trip in particular hurts so much. And it's just really embarrassing to have to explain to people over and over again why you are back so early, or why you don't have many pictures of the trip, or why you don't want to talk about it all of a sudden. All of those things is because it's a very personal experience. It feels like a very personal failure. But here's the thing, and I kind of touched on this before, but those failures most often teach you more than your successes do. So those failed trips, those failed experiences helped me learn a lot more than my successful backpacking trips. Because when something fails, you know exactly where it went wrong. You know exactly what didn't work, and you know to avoid it the next time. And here's something I want to mention at this point too. When you are talking about these backpacking trips, when you are thinking about them years from now, or whatever it is, the ones that you failed, do not tell yourself or tell others, I almost did a backpacking trip, or I failed a backpacking trip. You did a backpacking trip. You went out there, you planned it, you figured it out, you went out on the trail, you went out, you spent a day on the trail, or 5 days, or whatever it was, but you did a backpacking trip. You did all the planning, you figured it out, and you went out there, and then you came back. So the story you need to be telling yourself, and the kind of position you need to put yourself in, is not, I failed a backpacking trip. It was, I did a backpacking trip. It didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, and it didn't work out as much as I thought it was going to, but I did a backpacking trip, and I was able to go out there and have fun and enjoy nature. Maybe not for as long as I wanted to, but I got to go do it. What you take away from that is, I did an okay backpacking trip, and next time I'm gonna do a great one. Once again, all of this is coming from personal experience. I failed my first ever backpacking trip. It was 15 years ago, but I still say that I started backpacking 15 years ago because I did. I went on a backpacking trip, I took all my gear out, I spent the night on the trail, and then I came back. Not the way I was hoping to, but I did. And that is a backpacking trip. Whether you like it or not, that's how it is. So here are a few ways to reframe this failed backpacking trip into something positive. Number one is that you learned your limits. You know exactly what went wrong. You know exactly where you went wrong. And you know exactly what your limits are. So if you at any point on the trail or hiking and said, I don't think I can do this anymore, and you took another single step, that is pushing your limits, and that's learning your limit and then pushing past it. And that is invaluable experience to have on your backpacking trips, because the next time you plan a trip, you know exactly where your limits are, and you know that you can push past them if you need to. And that is really valuable. So you learned your limits with your gear that you can carry, with the weight you want to be carrying. You learned your limits with how far you can go and how much effort you can put in without actually failing. The second takeaway from this is, if nothing else, you were able to test your gear in real world conditions. And this is also really invaluable. It's a really important thing to do. Is I always tell people before you go out on the trail, make sure you test your gear. You understand how it works, you know how it works. Now you definitely know how it works in real world application, and you've done it yourself. So you know how that stove works out in the out in the wind, and you might realize, oh man, I really need a windscreen now because that stove was not working as well as I was hoping it would, and I need to bring a windscreen with me next time. You might have learned that you carried way too many changes of layer or clothing with yourself, so now you know to take less next time. You realize that you don't eat as much out on the trail as you thought you would, so you can bring less food. All of these things are super valuable, and it's really good real world application and experience for your gear and testing it on the trail and having a real life experience with testing your gear. And now you know next time what to bring and what to leave at home. So what do you do now after you've worked through all of that? What are the practical next steps for you from this point on? Number one is give yourself space to be sad that you didn't complete the backpacking trip in the way you thought you would. It's okay to feel bummed out about it. It's okay to tell people that you feel sad that you didn't get to complete it in the way you wanted to, and that you feel like you didn't quite do the best you could. That's okay to feel sad about it. That's not a problem. Number two is to debrief with yourself honestly. So like I said, figure out what gear worked and what gear didn't work, fix those mistakes for next time. Understand if you did you feel physically good and capable of doing this trail? Do you realize you were hitting your limits a lot faster than you meant to or that you wanted to? So now you know what kind of physical conditioning and training you need to do for the next trip. All of these things are really valuable. Figure out what worked and what didn't work and debrief well so you can get back on the trail next time and do it even better. And finally, and this is the most important step, plan your next trip. Plan your comeback. So don't let this be the trip that ends your backpacking career. Don't let it be this thing where you're like, well, I tried it once, it really didn't work out, I never want to touch it again. Don't let the failure become the story for backpacking in your life. So plan your next trip, get started, figure out the trail you want to hit next time. If it's the same trail, figure it out, start making plans, plan it for the next year, the next season, whatever it is, but start planning your comeback hike, your comeback backpacking trip, and get back out there and do it better, do it more confidently. It's really important here to remember that nobody does this right the first time. All of us are learning, all of us are trying to figure out how to backpack at different times. We've all had experiences that we wish we didn't have and that we wish we could forget. We've all had failures there. So as someone who's been backpacking for 15 years, there are a lot of moments on trips and a lot of trips as a whole that I look back on and say, man, I wish I knew these things before I did that trip because it would have made it so much better. But what's really important is learning those things and having those experiences and then getting back out on the trail to have fun and enjoy nature, which is what it's all about. So if you're sitting at home and you're thinking about this trip and you're thinking, I'm never going to do it again, reorient, learn from your mistakes, plan out your gear, plan out your next trip, get back out there and go have fun, because that's what this is really all about. And if you're not sure how to get started backpacking for the first trip or for the next trip, you can visit my website. I do have coaching available. I have blogs on there. You can visit my Instagram channel and my YouTube channel, and I have tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff to help you get started backpacking. But I would love to have a conversation with you and to coach you through your first or your next backpacking trip and how to get started. So the links are down in the description below, and I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.